Swapnil Bharti, and we are here in San Jose to cover Data Works Summit. And today we have with us Praveen Kankariya from Impetus. It's nice to have you on the show, and thanks for taking your time out and talking to me today. So can you tell us a bit about the company itself? What are you doing in this space?
We're a products and services company. We have products for big data management and analytics, and we provide a lot of services to build data management solutions and analytic solutions.
I saw your keynote this morning, and you mentioned about your age. It's interesting because when you look at big data, it's all about collecting data and learning from it. At the same time, you said you're a very privacy-centric person. How do you maintain that balance, and how do you think?
I think it goes back to responsibility. I mean, there are companies with whom I share a lot of my personal information because I know it's important for them to have this information. Then I also have faith in them that they'll not misuse this information.
Right.
So my banks have a lot of my information. They have my date of birth. They have my driver's license number. And
one more thing that I saw during your keynote was emphasis on open source. And since we kind of cover open source a lot, when you think about open source, it's there's day one where you get the code, but then companies cannot just use open source. You need a lot of support or things like that. So can you talk about your involvement with open source, and how do you kind of either empower open source or help your customers?
So first of all, let's just step back. There are true open source movements where people really come together and with fully altruistic motives, they create something which is in the open source. And then there are people who put things out in the open source and then they hope that it'll find adoption. And at that point, they create some commercial plans to commercialize the company.
Right.
Build a company around that open source product or that open source intellectual property and start providing support or have a dual source business model. There's an open source which creates comfort in the marketplace, creates easy adoption. So in some ways it also becomes a marketing tool, a marketing mechanism.
Right.
And then they have a higher souped up version, and large enterprises, they need support. It's a false sense of comfort that, oh yeah, there is a source code and I'll be able to go fix it for myself. Yeah, you can do it occasionally. That's not how you can run your infrastructure.
Yeah, because today nobody uses just one piece. There are so many different pieces coming from so many. So if either you're a tech company, then it's fine, you can do that. But sometimes you are just using technology to just
So open source is actually doing something good it's bringing down the cost of marketing.
Right.
And it's having a positive effect on the eventual cost of the product by bringing down the cost of marketing. For any software company, the cost of marketing the product far exceeds the cost of developing the product.
So when you say a company, you're talking Impetus, not your clients?
No. I'm talking in general right now.
In general, okay.
Everything I've said so far is in general.
Okay. Because people...
Now, what does Impetus do? What does Impetus do? Impetus has built products to truly empower some of the well-established open source technologies. Our products are not necessarily in the open source, but our products actually help you use an underlying open source technology way more effectively, increase the amount of productivity, and really help you productionalize that open source technology. So we consider ourselves as open source enablers.
There are a couple of things that you mentioned which were really hit some core point. One was bring the cost down. Bring the cost down for who? For a company like you who's offering solutions, or
No, for the customer.
For the customers.
For the customer.
Right. But in most cases, they are just using, like Red Hat customers, they are just, or Hortonworks customers, they are not dealing with open source. They're dealing with the solutions that Impetus or Red Hat or SUSE or whoever is offering. So
no, large companies like telecommunication companies, banks, who are customers of Hortonworks, they are actually paying Hortonworks for getting a supported version of Hortonworks' Hadoop implementation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So they do use open source fully, but they get support from the companies Okay, as a layer on top of.
Yeah, some companies actually, there is a lag in what is available truly in the open source is 6 months behind what
Right.
they're shipping to their supported customers.
So can you tell us what kind of solutions do you offer to your customers?
So multiple fronts. One is the biggest stumbling block that large companies who are trying to move out of legacy data warehouses is they have code, workloads, programs which are working on these old data warehouses. Thousands and thousands of these programs. Who's going to migrate them? Because they're useful, they're relevant.
Right.
And we keep beating up on these companies. Hey, you're not migrating, you're not modernizing too fast. How will they move? Who's going to rewrite all that software? Or who's going to convert all that software?
Right.
If it's going to be a manual effort, it'll be full of, it's going to be a slow effort. It'll be full of errors. Who's going to sit and verify that everything works correctly after migration? So we have created tools to help companies automatically migrate. So that's one. Second, we have a platform that allows you to build real-time data pipelines visually. So you can draw real-time pipelines. You can fully integrate machine learning into it. You can integrate deep learning into it. And you immediately productionalize real-time data pipelines and massively scale them. And then we provide a lot of services around this to help people actually put solutions into production. Selling products is one thing, but then taking a product and building a solution that actually fits the customer's specific needs. That's where services come in.
Okay. You mentioned, that moving the legacy workloads. When we look at the market, they're like insurance company which has been there for 150 years or 200 years, and they have a lot of monolithic code base. So are you talking about the same kind of workload, or are you talking about adding?
So I meant workloads in the specific context of enterprise data warehouses.
Right. Okay. So what is the biggest challenge that you see when you meet your customer and they're like, oh my, this is the one big problem you have to solve?
So the biggest challenge area that I see a lot of technology executives from large mainstream enterprises is cultural.
Okay.
Either not everybody in the company understands the value of the initiative. So for example, this morning I spoke of unifying all the data in a company so that you have one connected single view of everything. That is, not everybody understands the significance of doing this or the threat from not doing this. So people slow down these initiatives, which we call politics. And people are insecure about their own positions.
Right.
What they've been doing for 20 years, 30 years. They don't want it to go away because they worry that they will not be relevant with modernization. This is a classic problem in any industry.
Right.
So this is the biggest challenge I see.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at all these, cloud native technologies or modern technologies, it's not about technology, it's about people.
Yeah.
So how do you solve this problem? Because you're a tech company.
So I cannot solve this problem. I can only advise that if you don't do this, there's a massive cost. It's an existential cost to pay. So now if you're that company and mainstream enterprise, you have to decide for yourself.
So do you think the answer is training or something like that? Or
it's not in training. I think it starts at the senior leadership level. They need to really decide that this has to happen. One way or the other, this has to happen.
So we talked about the problem, that biggest problem that you see. At the same time, what are the big opportunities that you see that this is the big or what are the big opportunities, or as we are moving to IoTs and all those things you see in the market?
So there's tremendous value in data. We worked with a very large car company, and we worked on on creating predicting failures in their paint shop. And we could predict when there would be air bubbles before the air bubbles actually happen.
Like Minority Report.
Yeah. So, those tiny little air bubbles, sometimes you see them under the hood, but you don't want them on the body. And on luxury cars, they don't even want them under the hood. So we could predict even before the air bubbles started forming that I think the way things are going, we'll start seeing air bubbles in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Okay.
Based on certain conditions, the temperature of the paint, the humidity, this, that. We'd created complex mathematical models. And so that's just one little example. So they could now, as opposed to discarding a half-built car and sending it back into the paint shop, which is a very expensive process. So really helped. We worked with a credit card company and helped them move away from a rules-based fraud detection system. So every time you swiped a card somewhere in a restaurant or something, earlier they had a rules-based system that if I was within 50 miles of my home, then perhaps it was a safe transaction. Suddenly, if I was 5,000 miles away and there were no travel receipts in my travel charges in my name, then potentially it was a fraudulent transaction. We managed to convert it, and there would be a lot of false positives. So there would be places where the credit card would not work, and the consumer would just use another card. If one card didn't work, they would try another card. But so that company, the first card company, created dissatisfaction in the minds of the customer, caused inconvenience to the customer, second, and third, lost the revenue opportunity from that transaction. So we actually worked with them on creating a machine learning based model which could predict whether this was actually a fraud or not. And as opposed to using some rigid rules which were written years ago, so we actually decreased the false positives and increased customer satisfaction and revenue for this company significantly just in 6 months. So and I have so many.
And rules-based can also be beaten very easily. With machine learning, you're constantly improving.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're here at this conference. So this is the first day, but you have met a lot of customers and clients and partners. What is the biggest takeaway from the summit?
Every conversation is unique and different. Each customer, and I'm meeting people who have very specific accountabilities, and everybody's got something different brewing. But the challenges are either cultural or technical, and it's always interesting and keeps life going.
So when I was at your booth, I saw there were two names there. One was Impetus and one was Kairos. Tell us about that. What is that?
Kairos is a very unique and extremely innovative company that we spun out of Impetus some years ago. And Kairos has created a business intelligence platform on big data, and it's the fastest BI platform for serving BI queries at a massive scale. So you can have billions of customers or many billions of parts, and you can quickly query from any BI tool like Tableau, Power BI, or even fire queries from Excel. And it can respond extremely fast, making BI a highly interactive process.
Do you work like alone, or do you have partners also when you offer all these solutions, because they just fit in somewhere in that stack?
They fit into. So we work with companies like Hortonworks, Cloudera, several other companies at different places in the stack, where we have to depend on some other partners for providing something. We alone cannot boil the ocean. So.
Right.
Yeah. This is a community effort.
Right. And I'll go back to the earlier conversation that we had initially, and that was around open source. How much of your own technologies are open source, and what are the projects that you're involved with?
There are few we've been involved in, but most of our mainstream offerings are enabling open source. That's the approach we have taken. That hey, how do we? Open source is good if you don't have production pressures, if you're not running multi-billion-dollar businesses. But for people who have serious business needs, how do we make sure that they can really rely on that open source technology? How can they make it easy to put it into production? Because you cannot run a multi-billion-dollar business with something which is fledgling or raw or has rough edges.
Can you name some of the I am
so we enable use of Spark streaming, Apache Spark based Spark streaming. Kairos actually helps do all the data processing using Spark to make BI extremely fast. So these are two good examples.
Okay. And in addition to helping and enabling customer, do you also help the developers, like in fixing bugs or patching things? Do you give back to community?
We work with these companies. Okay. We give them a lot of feedback on what's working, what's not working. We sometimes bridge between some of the companies supporting some open source technology and the end customer and provide feedback. Sometimes we have to take matters in our own hands and we fix it immediately and then send that fix to that company to hopefully incorporate.
Yeah, sometimes.
So we do all of the above.
Right. So when you're not doing all this big data and all the analytics, what do you do in your free time?
Oh, what do I do in my free time? I have a family. I have 2 boys. They're big boys now. And they're both athletes, so it keeps me busy. I travel with them to competitions and whatnot. Sometimes I take them for their training and whatnot. So it keeps me busy.
So, okay.
And then I travel a lot to our R&D centers in India. And I enjoy that, going there, working with our engineers directly. So that keeps me busy as well.
Since you mentioned you help are you using any kind of machine learning technology or big data to improve their...
No. Sports performance is about hard work and then being mentally fit and tough.
Yeah, that's a good approach, because I was thinking you're like, they're all plugged with all the sensors.
No. I thought of that. I once got a little band which could measure their level of relaxation and focus and all that. And those things.
That's not.
I mean, they could work, but ultimately, an athlete has to figure out how to relax under all situations.
Exactly, how your body is working, and it's more about being.
It's actually beyond a certain point. It's mental. It's not physical.
Yeah.
You have to work very hard to get to that level of physical ability. But most advanced athletes, once they get to that level, then it's mental from there on.
Right. Anyway, Praveen, it was awesome talking to you.
Likewise,
today.
Swapnil.
And hopefully we'll see you again at the next conference, which could be either about data or open source. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.